Jesus had 12 disciples, and in this series we're looking at what happened to them after the biblical narrative ends. Since scriptures don't tell us, we've got to look into traditions and external sources. Today is the turn of Bartholomew, whose travels had only just begun after he'd met Jesus. We first meet Bartholomew when Jesus groups all the disciples together for the first time and sends them out to preach his message. He's often bundled together with the apostle Philip, who would gain later fame from his story about the Ethiopian in the book of Acts. Bartholomew is notably absent from the Gospel of John, and is seemingly replaced by someone called Nathaniel. Now, of course, over the years it's been thought that both Bartholomew and Nathaniel were the same guy with two different names, which, if you've seen any of the previous episodes on this channel about this, isn't exactly a surprise. Saul becomes Paul and all that sort of thing. Nathaniel only ever appears in John's Gospel, and again is bundled with Philip. In his brief appearance, Philip takes him to meet Jesus, and Nathaniel scoffs when he hears where Jesus comes from. But when he meets him, Jesus really impresses him, and he decides to stick around. He's not mentioned much after this, but he's present at a couple of the same miracles that Bartholomew's recorded it being at, and this is another reason why people put two and two together. Some modern scholars aren't quite as sure that it's the same chap. So what were these miracles that Bartholomew was present at then? Well, he was there to see Jesus ascend alongside the other remaining apostles, and after being part of the group that picked Judas's replacement, he was also there to see how Pentecost went down, and was obviously there for Peter's grand speech. After that, we don't hear from him again, but that's not to say that he wasn't up to anything. Old Bartholomew had got wandering feet just like his friends Paul and Peter, and he set off on a missionary trip just like his peers. However, while one trip is documented, the other is only told in traditions. First off, the documented evidence is from our compiler of all documents Christian, who we met in the last episode, Eusebius. In part of his writing on history, he notes that Pantaenus, a noted scholar of the city of Alexandria, had decided to set off to preach the gospel message. He set off for a long journey to a place he was sure hadn't been reached yet, India. Once he arrived though, he began to preach and realised that people there had already heard the gospel message, and some of them had even become Christians. Turns out that years prior, Bartholomew had beaten him to it, and had even given them a parting gift, a copy of the Gospel of Matthew, written in Hebrew. On to the tales told by traditions then, and once again Bartholomew was off to preach to anyone that would hear him. However, this time he would take his fellow apostle Jude with him, and they would both end up in Armenia. Both are seen by local tradition as being the ones that brought the message of Christianity to the area. And it's here that poor Bartholomew became a martyr. The apostle had been preaching the gospel and caught the ear of the king, who converted from the worship of the local pantheon to Christianity. Now, not exactly everybody was happy about this, particularly the king's brother. Thinking that this would cause grief with the Romans, he ordered a grisly fate for the apostle, to be skinned alive and then beheaded for good measure. Scholars, of course, aren't entirely sure of the accuracy of this tale, since the name of the king or his brother in the tales don't line up with any historical records, but legends often have truth in them, so some suggest that this may have actually happened just in India instead. In any case, as with the case with Peter, his martyrdom is his symbol, usually a depiction of him without any skin or a set of flaying knives. Naturally, he's the patron saint of Armenia. Well, turns out that it's not just the famous apostles who really wanted to fill the Great Commission to preach the message to the ends of the earth. Next time, we're going to be looking at one of the apostles who was really interesting before he even became a disciple. So be prepared to discuss a bit of 1st century Judean politics and missionary journeys as we explore the tale of Simon the Zealot. So, as always, go grab yourself a drink and keep asking questions, and I will see you all next time.